Yo guys, what's up? I just finished watching Dune 2 in the cinemas and I wanted to share with you my review. It is going to be spoiler free until I say so. So if you're listening to this passively, aka you're doing some gardening and you've got my video open, it's best to pause it and watch it another time. Don't watch now. But if you're going to have access to your play controls, then I will clearly say when the spoiler start begins, which is the second half of the video, and then you can just stop watching the video and I'll see you next video from that point onwards. If you have already seen or you don't mind the spoilers, you can freely watch the whole video and listen to the whole video from beginning to end. I'll be very clear about where the spoiler part starts, but now I'm going to start with a review that will not spoil any part of the story. Maybe it will help to convince you to watch or don't watch Dune 2, and maybe you'll enjoy hearing how I felt about the game, about the film. Oh, thank you for the sub. All right. So, first of all, I watched Dune 1 before, and I was very impressed with it. I had no special expectations for Dune 1. I also didn't read the books, so I didn't have any expectations for how the book adaptation is or was. Sometimes they're kind of hit and miss. Depends on which director gets their hands on it. And I felt that Dune 1 was probably an 8 out of 10. I really liked it. I feel like it was impressive, spectacular, and so on. But I'm not here to talk about Dune 1. I'm here to talk about Dune 2. I think Dune 2 was a little better than Dune 1 even. I thought it was fantastic. Here are my thoughts on it. So, I feel like the special effects were really good to the point that I didn't even feel like I was watching special effects. Every large machine or organism that may or may not be in the show, I feel like was displayed very well, very realistically. And it was only one time maybe that I looked at it and I thought, that's probably CGI. Logically, I know many things are, because many things shown in Dune 2 are not really on Earth. Maybe Australia, but like much of it isn't. So I didn't feel like I was watching very obvious CGI. Like when Aragorn in Lord of the Rings jumps on the horse or Legolas jumps on some monster. It's pretty obvious that it was post effects added, computer imagery and so on. I didn't get that sense. It felt so real and realistic when I was watching it that it really left me with a sense of wonder when I finished watching the film. It felt real, impressive and impactful. So I think talking about the narrative, I feel like Dune 2 had interesting and compelling narratives, which of course I'm not going to talk about now until the spoiler part. There were weighty, important themes and decisions for the characters in the film that felt logical, they felt difficult, they felt larger than life, but they fit within the world. It felt meaningful and difficult to navigate for the main characters, and I enjoyed that. I was impressed by the cinematography and costume work. Sometimes someone would be sitting in a certain way that just looked cool. It looked badass. It was atypical. The costumes looked great on them. They'd be sitting on the world of Dune, which I don't think is much of a spoiler. And it just looked cool. The film is about 2 hours, 45 minutes long. And with that kind of length, I felt that Dune 2 really took the time to expose the world and the story in a manner that is very reminiscent of the pacing of Lord of the Rings. There are exciting moments, there are pressing moments, pressurized moments, but it also felt like not every single little thing that they showed in Dune 2 was necessarily a narrative device to propel some important plot forward. You know those films when someone surreptitiously sticks a dagger in their pocket and then you're like, okay, I know you're showing me this on purpose. This is going to be used later. That dagger matters. I always think like, okay, you have to show those moments because you're telling a story, but sometimes it's nice to be shown things that aren't necessarily going to come back later, because then you get that ring the bell like ding, 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 this dagger matters. And I feel like it can be a little bit too in your face. So I enjoyed when we saw imagery that was not immediately necessary to tell an important unfolding of a mystery, but just to expose the world, to set the atmosphere. And the atmosphere was fantastic. The soundscape, the landscape. I don't remember any particular music tracks that I thought, wow, these are like musical bangers that I'm going to play on my Spotify list. but it was good and it fit the atmosphere of the film. Speaking about the non-music part, the sound effects, they were impressive. When basically the voice acting for the actors was good, and you may know that sometimes they use the Bene Gesserit voice in Dune 1. I think this comes across really powerfully and really surprisingly and really cool. And then every object, every organism that made sounds, it sounded impressive. I watched it in IMAX and it felt like thunderous at the right time. It felt metallic at the right time. It was really cool. So for me, all in all, I feel like Dune 2 felt very impressive. It's one of those films where after finishing watching, I would probably feel like I could watch it again immediately. I think it was a worthy successor, and it leaves me for wanting more as well. I hope they're going to do a Dune 3. They have to do a Dune 3, hopefully. So I'll be looking forward to that. Now, in order to discuss the story and the film in a little bit more detail, I'm going to be starting the spoiler part. So if you don't want to be spoiled on anything of the film, then I recommend you to stop watching now. And I'll give you some time for that. Pause, quit. All right, to start things off with the inherent discussion about what happened in the film, for those that already have watched Dune 2 and may feel like it's fun to talk about some of the points, I want to discuss my favorite and my least favorite parts of the film. You already know that I really like it. Dune 2, I would watch it again. I want to watch Dune 3. But let's talk about one of the least favorite parts of the film. Nothing terrible, nothing that ruined the film by any means, but just slightly less believable for me, perhaps. The way that Feyd-Rautha Harkonnen was portrayed by the actor Austin Butler felt, or maybe the way that he was written, I'm not sure exactly whether it's a casting thing or how it was acted or how it was written, but it could be a decision by Denis Villeneuve, the director. I don't think that Austin Butler did a bad job by any means to portray Feyd-Rautha, as he sold the image of a sadistic, warmongering psychopath, ambitious, and so on. I don't think it was badly depicted or anything. You could see that he was a megalomaniacal sadist, but it felt a little bit unrealistic to me at some points. I could see that with like the bald head and the black teeth and his maniacal stare in front of him, he was supposed to portray a kind of psychopath, but underneath all the makeup, I still feel like he was too much of a pretty boy. I feel like he was a little bit too self-aware of how he was looking to really convincingly sell the image of a psychopath whose core desires are desire, that he's sexually vulnerable, and that he is has a humiliation kink. Those were found out to be his triggers. I didn't really feel that too much. And I think maybe with a different actor, it could have been a bit better. It felt a bit too cliche or over the top at times, the way he tried to focus his stare and do his poise and everything. And I wasn't 100% convinced. It was not a bad job by any means, but maybe a little bit less quiet malignance than I was hoping for. It leads me to a second point. Which is more of a narrative point when it comes to Feyd-Rautha Harkonnen's story arc. So Feyd-Rautha was brought in as a psychopath to deal with the Fremen threat, the Fremen resistance. Harkonnen want to exploit all the spice on Arrakis, or on Dune, the planet, and the Fremen were resisting it with terrorism and rebellion and sabotage and so on. And initially, you had his brother or his nephew, acted by Dave Bautista. His cousin, I think, right? Rabban Harkonnen. Rabban Harkonnen was initially in charge of harvesting as much spice as possible, get production up, and to make sure that Rabban could deliver to Vladimir the spice so that Vladimir could deliver it to the Emperor, and so that we're getting maximum exploitation. So when Rabban started working on exploiting the spice, I don't know how intelligent he's supposed to be canonically from the books, but his plan was just sending out these spice harvesters and just starting to harvest with a modicum of protection via one helicopter that has a shield and a really good gun that can gun down many Fremen. right? And then they have some boots on the ground as well to protect the spice harvester. And then they were sabotaged and attacked. And what's his reaction? To do it again. to send out more harvesters. And he keeps being like, okay, I'll try to get it for you, uncle. And his uncle is like, well, you're failing me. And he doesn't deal with the Fremen threat directly. That felt like a noob move, a bit of a skill issue. Might be like a Raban intelligence issue. But then they bring in Feyd-Rautha, and they're like, you know, your cousin failed, you go and do it now. And I feel like it's a bit of a shame that we as the viewer do not see why and how he is devious beyond his cousin, right? So we know he's sadistic, we know he loves to be humiliated, we know that he's kind of devious or whatever, but how did he find the Fremen stronghold, the siege? The first time we become aware of it is when we're following the main characters somewhere in the south, I believe, or at least on the way south, and then the northern stronghold, the siege, gets blown up by Feyd-Rautha and the Harkonnen. But how did they find that place? That's something that I do not believe we find out as a viewer. And it makes it feel like all the Harkonnen had to do is just to see where they are and then to blow them up, because they clearly have the firepower to blow up all the Northerners, who are in much smaller numbers, 200 if I recall correctly, than the Southern Fundamentalist army. So did they really need Feyd-Rautha to break the Fremen resistance in the north? Or did they literally just have to follow a couple of rats in the desert to find their stronghold and then blow it up? So I would have liked to see them to see Feyd-Rautha discover the stronghold, or to use some part of his intelligence or his planning or his ruthlessness to discover where they are, rather than just becoming a late participant to the discovery that this siege is being blown up. I'm not going to say it's definitely wrong. I'm not a director, but at least I didn't figure out why Feyd-Rautha was needed for that play. Then the part that I liked more, I feel like the story development of Paul Muad'Dib was Osel, I think. Paul Muad'Dib, Osel, was good. His girlfriend and the Fremen freedom fighter Chani, and Paul's mother, Lady Jessica, as well. So Jessica is obviously part of the Shadow Council, this female witch coven, if you will, of immeasurable power, and they're called the Bene Gesserit, right? Every depiction that they displayed of their powers, where they use their voice to command someone to do something, the way that they can manage their brain in order to fight off the worm blood slash water of life liquid, seeing their grand machinations unfold of decades or even centuries of planning with bloodlines and political interference, and then cloaking it in prophecy. I thought that was a really cool story arc that I love to follow. I can see her benefits in doing it, Lady Jessica. I don't know if she really believes, because supposedly the Bene Gesserit look to safeguard a prosperous, good future of the universe. So essentially they are altruistic. They're looking for the best way to lead to like an enlightened future. But of course, I don't know if everyone that works in this organization for an enlightened future actually has such morals. Is that completely enshrined within their cult? Or could you maybe be like rogue and just want to enrich your own family? I don't know if that's the case. The film also doesn't show it. But Lady Jessica is doing a good job at securing a good future for her son by spreading the prophecy across the whole planet of Dune. So I think that's a cool story. So she obviously wants the prophecy to succeed. She has been co-creator of that prophecy. Paul Muad'Dib, on the other hand, he doesn't actually believe in himself being the one, the Neo from the Matrix, the Messiah of the people. And he has this interesting character arc of where he doesn't believe in his own prophecy. He doesn't believe that he's the Messiah, because he has broken the fourth wall, and he sees it's actually his mother and the Bene Gesserit that are behind the grand machinations, the Machiavellian string pulling behind the scenes, and that they're actually the ones that are making this thing happen. So he does not want to overrule the autonomy of the Fremen people to protect the planet with his own leadership. He wants to leave it to the Fremen. But because he starts drinking the worm blood as well, and he gains clairvoyance, he can see all the futures that could happen, and that there's only a narrow set of futures where the best possible outcome is secured. And one, as the viewer, one has to assume that every future decision he makes, so long as his heart is still in the right place, and he still wants to do good for the Fremen, one has to assume that every decision he makes from that point onwards is in order to secure the probability of one of those small likelihoods of things going the best way that they can with the least possible, human sacrifice and suffering. And because of that, he reluctantly embraces the mantle of Messiah, and in fact has quite a large character change, seemingly, but it fits within his character, where instead of denying he wants to be leader, he suddenly claims it, almost shockingly effectively, suddenly, by claiming the Emperor's daughter, by claiming to be the leader of the rebellion, by claiming to be the Messiah. He doesn't really believe in it, but he recognizes that it is an important tool to leverage the power of religion in order to wield the Fremen, the Southern fundamentalists, in their millions as a weapon, so that he can take his vengeance. His father didn't believe in vengeance. He can take his vengeance on the Harkonnen against the Emperor, and this is also going to end up protecting the Fremen, since neither the Emperor nor the Harkonnen really had a very good vision for what's going to happen to the Fremen. They would like all the Fremen to be exterminated so they can exploit the spice. And this is something Muad'Dib took exception to. So I feel like everything he decided makes sense. And then obviously his girlfriend and Chani, she doesn't like seeing him go marry off some other girl, even if it is a politically expedient marriage. So obviously we get to see how they take this news. We see the emotions on their face. There's a lot of close-ups on their faces, and I think that they acted out really well to show this emotional turmoil that is the result of these decisions. One thing I'm not sure about is, was it really necessary for him to marry the Emperor's daughter? None of the other great houses seem to accept his ascension to Emperor, despite the Emperor kissing his ring and basically electing him as the new Emperor in order to keep his own life, and because he was defeated in battle. But perhaps in some probabilities in the future they would have accepted it. So yeah, I guess he's playing probabilities, which means the film doesn't have to make everything go right in order to prove that he's doing the right thing. That's how clairvoyance with multiple possible outcomes works, I suppose. So I don't know what's going to happen in the future in Dune 3. Hopefully we're going to be getting one, but Dune 3 would no doubt be showing and I haven't read the book, so I can't predict it that way. Dune 3 would be showing where it's going to go from here, his relationship to Chani, who is now traveling north to freedom fight in the north, and his relationship to the Emperor's daughter, and how the other houses are going to respond or fight with House Atreides now that Atreides has assumed leadership over the world Arrakis. What's going to happen with the Fremen now that they've defeated their immediate threat but are going to be dealing with an otherworldly universal threat with all the other houses. Super interesting. I think it leaves a lot of story to be told. I love the movie, 8.8 out of 10. Hope to see more next time, and hope you enjoyed this review. It is imperative we get a sequel. Hopefully it's going to happen.